This episode of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast is sponsored by Caneswear. Caneswear.com is the spot where Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com, the best and most affordable gear for the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Marlins, the Miami Heat, the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, all of the professional and college sports teams in South Florida. Caneswear.com has you covered. If you're in South Florida, you can visit the storefront at 2655 South University Drive in Davie. They ship internationally as well. So Caneswear.com, make it the place. It's the best and most affordable Miami Dolphins gear. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com. And don't forget about Dolphins Talk Extra. Go to patreon.com/DolphinsTalk for additional Miami Dolphins content. You get extra access to our private Discord server. You get bonus podcasts covering the Miami Dolphins. You get off-topic content as well. We have live watch-alongs. We have retro rewatches where we watch old games and talk about them. We do off-topic shows. We have prizes, contests, all kinds of exclusive access only for Dolphins Talk Extra subscribers. So join us, patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. You can join the fun for as little as $3 a month. Head on over to Dolphins Talk Extra at patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. And now, on with the show.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Hello, Dolphin fans, and welcome back to another episode of Dolphins Talk. My name is Marissa Marino, and today I am joined by NFL reporter for NFL Network, Mr. Cameron Wolfe, or Cam. Cam, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Marissa. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm so glad to have you here. I know that things are ramping back up for you. Are you starting to get in the swing of things here?
Yeah, whether you want it or not, this is the time of year where you're back in the swing. I'm already answering emails and texts and people coming back from vacation and training camp for next week. So I love football, but it's a bittersweet end of a summer break that is getting shorter and shorter every year.
It really, really is. Well, we are so glad to have you and catch you before things get super busy. So we will jump right into things. So I'm just going to start with just an overall view. Let's just start here. Miami finished 8-9 last year. They missed the playoffs. With all the offseason changes, I mean, you've seen it. Coaching staff tweaks, roster churn, the trade with Pittsburgh. Are the Dolphins closer to contending, do you believe, or further away from it?
Good question. I think that the roster talent-wise is further away from contending. I do. I saw this team in OTAs, and I don't think you can say with a confident voice that they got better talent-wise this offseason. Now, the Dolphins' argument, and that's something we'll have to see, is that they feel like they are in a better place with culture, although they don't say that word in the building, discipline, accountability, and maybe some moves they made are addition by subtraction. That's their belief. Mm-hmm. And we will see. They're betting on youth. They're betting on new leadership. They're betting on bounce-back years from some of their stars, and they're betting on the health of a lot of players, most notably their two edge rushers, and Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. So I see a path for the Dolphins to be better than 8-9 and to be a playoff team. But if you're just looking at this team like a Madden roster and doing A and B with 2024, I think you're going to see they probably went down a few notches in the overall rating.
Fair enough. And you did mention youth. So Miami last year, average-wise, we had the highest average team by age. This year, Miami has some new faces on their offensive line. We know that Armstead retired. They have some youth in Patrick Paul now, Jonah Savaianaya. They are getting they've gotten James Daniels, who's coming off of a major injury, but is only 27, soon to be 28. The depth for this offensive line is an issue for sure, but compared to offensive lines Miami has had in recent years, do you like the Dolphins bringing in some new faces and going with a bit of a youth movement with this position group?
I do, Marissa. I think that's the route for the offensive line. Like everybody wants a quick finish, quick fix, quick finish to fixing this O line. And look, we've talked O line every year I've covered the Dolphins of, hey, are they going to fix this? What's the problem? And the reality is the best teams, a team like Philadelphia, a team like Detroit, at having offensive line play, they draft really well, they develop them, and they extend it. And they're long term. That's usually the route. Very rarely are you trading and free agency signing your way to a really good offensive line. And so I do like, bringing in a second round pick in Jonah, who, we haven't seen him on the pads yet. Hopefully we'll see that in training camp if everything goes well with his contract. And you get to see him develop for 4 years. Now, year one may not be the lockdown guard that you want. There's a lot of time that comes with development, but they have a good O-line coach in Butch Berry, and I like the idea you're seeing him develop. I like the idea of how Aaron Brewer has played in his second year in the scheme, and you get to see Patrick Paul as a full-time starter at left tackle, which he didn't get a lot of time in games, but he got a lot of practice time because Sharon Armstead missed a lot of time, and so have him back, and then obviously a healthy Austin Jackson, and then we'll kind of see when James Daniels is back on the field. But I do like the way they're trying to build cohesiveness and multi-year vision with the offensive line rather than just a lot of 1 year plug and plays.
100%. So let's go into off the offensive line and go into everyone's favorite topic, which is Tua. Probably know before I even say it. So he's entering year 6, and health has been a constant issue for Tua. If he misses more games this year, and this year looks like last year where he was out for about 6 games, but around there, do you think this could be Tua's final year with the Miami Dolphins?
That's a great question. I think that there's definitely an increased sense of urgency for Tua. I think he hoped that 2024 was going to 2023 was going to erase the injury question, but it popped back up in a bigger way because he had the concussion that went on IR and then the hip afterwards. It's always going to be something that follows Tua. If he goes out and plays every game this year, there's still going to be people who question whether or not he can stay healthy. The way they structured his contract last year, I don't have it in front of me, but I think that he has guarantees going into 2026. So the messiness of that would just be you maybe eating some money. I have the belief that he probably has 2 years here, regardless of how it goes. Maybe if he doesn't stay healthy, you're more aggressive in drafting a backup next year than you were in the 7th round with Quinn Ewers. But I just don't know that this team is set up to reset at quarterback, given how much money they've allocated everywhere, but most notably into it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to find themselves in a Daniel Jones, New York Giants situation.
Right.
So,
I just looked down. So he's got $54 million of his 2026 salary that's already been guaranteed. So you'd be eating $54 million if you wasn't your quarterback in 2026, which teams usually aren't too apt of doing that.
Yeah, that's not an easy pill to swallow, especially when you're in already what they call cap hell at certain times.
Right.
All right. So moving to the Dolphins running back room, that's an area that I can say confidently I'm very excited in. It looks a lot different this year than it did a year ago. Mostert's no longer with the team. Devon Acham is clearly the firm leader of this running back core. Jalen Wright returns for a bigger role, hopefully, this season. And then they've added Alexander Madison and rookie Ollie Gordon II to bring some physicality and some depth. So you're losing veteran leadership in other areas of your line from like Jonnu Smith, who left, and he was a huge catch and score person. So there's going to be that void. Do you think that this backfield mix with speed, power, youth will give Miami enough juice to replace the production that we have lost?
I think that it's going to look different, right? The big question I have about this running back room is, do they have the longevity to be able to last through the year? Like I love Devon Achane. I think that, I'm a fantasy football player. He's going to be a guy I target in the first round of drafts because I just think that he's going to get the ball so much. Like he is the clear lead guy for the first time in his career throughout the whole season. He's, improved as a pass catcher. He even got good production last year, despite really subpar offensive line play from the run blocking perspective. And so I'm eager to see him, but he is still a small back. And, I've talked to the running back coach, Eric Studesville, a lot about this. And he was like, hey, I don't tamper his workload because he's shown me he can handle it. But at some point, you don't have a Raheem, you don't have a Jeff, you don't have that vet to bounce back. It's a lot on the kids, and they believe they can handle it. Between he and Jalen Wright. But that to me is the bigger question rather than the talent, because talent-wise, I think they've got it. I think Achane's ready. I think Jalen Wright, another year within the scheme. People forget he had a very different scheme in Tennessee where they had a lot of wide splits. This offense can be complex at times. Another year of him knowing the system, knowing how to hit gaps, him being able to be that pure runner, be able to add some pass catching in his game. I'm eager to see it. And then maybe one of those two other backs you mentioned, whether it's Ollie Gordon or Madison, can be a little bit more effective in the short yardage situations that the Dolphins struggled with last year. I think that's where you'll see them carve out a role.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, I mean, that's fair. You're looking at it too from like a veteran leadership perspective when you're talking about this O-line, and now you're talking about this running back room. Like nobody really pops up that you're like, okay, who's going to be that guy? Now,
Right.
Austin Jackson is the one who's the consistent, Liam Eichenberg, but like we're not going to go there. So,
Dolphins fans' favorite player, as I've learned.
our favorite. Now, they are getting somebody who came off of retirement in Darren Waller.
Yep.
How do you see Darren Waller fitting into McDaniel's scheme? And do you think it's realistic that he's going to have a real deep impact on this team if he stays healthy?
Yeah, it's a complete wild card. I did not expect that trade. Everything I'd heard about Darren Waller is he was definitely not mind on football. So obviously something changed. I don't know a lot about where Darren Waller is, what type of shape he's in, what type of mental space he is in. We're going to find out. And obviously the Dolphins signed him to a low risk deal. It's a 1 year, $2 million deal with $3 million and not likely to be earned incentives. So towards the cap, it's going to be, closer to the minimum as far as a cap hit. So there's not a lot of risk in there. Upside is, can he be the productive player that he was his last year with the Giants, where he's getting 500, 600, 700 yards? Maybe not Jonnu's numbers last year, but better than every other tight end that's been here in the Mike McDaniel era. I think that's probably your upside. Your downside is, can he make it to week one? I think there's still a lot of uncertainty about where he is mentally. He says he wants to play, and I'm eager to talk to him. We'll talk to him next week before training camp starts to just get an idea of where his mental's been in the last, year away from the game. But if you can get some of the athleticism, some of the playmaking ability that he showed at his peak, then it's a big coup for Miami, because they're certainly missing that third weapon in the passing game, the true passing game with Jonnu gone. And so if Waller can win one-on-ones against linebackers and safeties and find that middle of the field, then I think he becomes a huge asset to this offense. So hope right now, but there's still a lot of uncertainty there with Darren and where he is.
100% there is. I don't think any Dolphin fans had him coming on the team on their bingo card, but he said the only person he'd come out of retirement for is Frank Smith. And I think that just plays to something that the two of them will be paired up again. So we shall see what happens. So 100%. Switching over to defense, Calais Campbell is gone. So sad. That one hurts. Yeah. Kenneth Grant comes in. Chubb and Phillips are returning. What is your take on this Dolphins front seven right now?
Yeah, they're going to have to be the drive of the team. One thing I did notice in OTAs, we talked about maybe the change of talent. The linebackers may be a group that has improved this offseason. They look faster. They look younger. They look like they have a little bit more juice in that room. And I think that's going to help the Dolphins a lot. And obviously you mentioned the two edge rushers from Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips. They had tremendous springs, Bradley Chubb has been a little bit ahead of Jalen Phillips as far as team drills. And so we've seen him get sacks. We've seen him get into the backfield. He looks like he's ready to hunt. It's been 2 years since he's been able to chase a quarterback. And so I can't wait to see him do it, for real for the first time. I think that's going to be a big coup. And Jalen Phillips, he has mastered the art of recovery. The big thing for both of them is the fear of, man, can we get through a season without getting hurt again? And you want them to be able to play with that mental freedom. But in the back of their mind, they're thinking about, the injuries and overcoming the injuries. And so if they can stay healthy, it raises the ceiling of this defense tremendously. They can get after the quarterback. You add in Chop Robinson with the two pass rushers I mentioned, and that can be one of the better trios in the NFL. You still got Zach Sealer inside. Kenneth Graham can plug some holes. I really like that front. And they're going to have to do a lot of the work because the reality is that secondary is inexperienced. And this team, if this defense is going to be good, it's going to be because they're getting pressure and they're stopping the run in that first and second level.
Cam, we're just on the same wavelength because the next thing I was going to talk about is, when we talk about something good, we got to go to something different. And that
balance.
That cornerback room right now feels really incomplete.
Yeah.
Ramsey gone, and outside of one or two names, it's pretty thin. Do you believe Miami has mismanaged this position, or do you expect them to wait until August cuts or hit the trade market for a fix?
Yeah, offensive line, take a seat because cornerback is finally the biggest question mark on the team. I think offensive line has had that for like 17 straight years. Yeah. And they're like, finally, there's another position group that can take us off. Yeah, that cornerback room is barren of proven talent. They've got some youth, some potential, but there's not any guy I can look on that roster right now and say they'd be a bona fide starter on another 10 other teams on this league. I think that because of that, it's going to be a huge question mark. It's going to be something that is targeted time and time again. And even if they do bring in a guy, and I know I've talked to a handful of guys, your Rasul Douglases, you talk to your Asante Samuel Juniors that have different question marks, whether it be age, whether it be injuries, whether it be the fit with the scheme or the money they're requiring. They're going to have to bring in somebody eventually. Stephon Gilmore is still out there. But the reality is they're going to be betting on a lot of these young players. Your Cam Smith's going to have to play. It's no question about it. And so because of that, I am concerned. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that's a big concern. I think it was a concern even if Jalen Ramsey was on the roster, and now that he's not, it reminds me of this, and this is why I'm a little concerned. It's a different coach, but I remember being here, and I think that was the 2019 or 2020, the tank year, quote unquote, when Brian Flores was here and Minka was here early on in the season. And I thought about it because Minka was coming back, and I was trying to replay that time. And the roster, particularly at cornerback, was so bad that Minka had to be forced to play boundary corner, slot corner, sometimes box safety, sometimes deep safety. And then he just had so much uncertainty. I remember talking to him, and sometimes late in the week, he didn't know which position he was going to play on Sunday because they just had him filling holes. And so my worry is that because of a lack of proven depth, that's going to be a revolving door every single week, and guys may have to be played out of position. And so that's the worry. The upside, of course, is maybe Cam Smith balls out. Maybe some of these undrafted kids or play well, Storm Duck or Ethan Bonner come show out, and maybe you find some diamonds in the rough, and maybe the free agent you sign ends up being a real gem. But that's a lot of ifs. That's a lot of hopes for a position group that gets a lot of attention. We're going to know if you have good cornerback play early on. You're going to have to see Stephon Gilmore. You're going to have to see Garrett Wilson, who just got a big contract out there. You're going to have to see the compilation of weapons they have in Buffalo with Josh Allen. It's going to be a challenge. And I think that early on in the season, I expect to see some struggles as they try to figure out the right scheme to be able to help those guys.
Yeah, I mean, we're going into year 3 with this Cam Smith business. And at this point, I'm like, I just want to know, is he, isn't he? Like, I want to be able to move on from the topic of Cam Smith and what he's capable of. But it's still to be determined. So
it is.
Yeah,
it is. And look, it's a you got to show me. All the words, I've heard the coaches talk about how he's worked hard and he's done better for his body. I got to see it. I got to see it against real NFL players and for it to matter. And so There is a lot of question marks on that group, and that's the group I'm watching most when training camp starts. Anthony Weaver's talked a lot about the pass rush helping them out, but that's a lot of pressure on those guys to be able to carry a whole defense.
Well, we can't wait to see your coverage on that. So let's shift to another hot topic, and I'm just going to ask you plainly, Cam.
Okay.
Is Mike McDaniel coaching for his job this season?
Aren't we all right? I think that this is the most pressure Mike McDaniel's felt by far in his career, and I think that he knows he needs to win to feel the full security that he wants there in Miami. Now, would Stephen Ross make that move? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it would take. Like, everybody always makes those season predictions of you got to make the playoffs or this guy is fired. You got to win a playoff game or this guy's a fire. You got to win at least 8 or 9 games. I don't know what that criteria is in Stephen Ross's mind. That's why I can't say for sure. But I will tell you this, this is a team that with ownership, they've been hungry to not only make the playoffs and win a game. And look, they paid a lot of people money. They paid Tyreek, they paid Jalen, they paid Tua, they paid Mike. They paid multiple Jalen's. It's a lot of money to be thrown out for not much results. And so eventually there's going to have to be some sort of accountability there. Brian Flores got just 3 years and the same amount of playoff wins. And so different style of coach, obviously a little bit more personable, but, we're now going into, year 4, I believe, in the Mike McDaniel era. And so sooner or later, you're going to have to get results. So he has seemed to have a greater urgency on accountability, on discipline, and players have seemed to hear him in a way they may not have heard him before. That's going to be a big part of it because talent hasn't been an issue the previous years. It's been their lack of toughness, their lack of accountability and discipline in the moments that matter. Now they believe they've found that. At the same time, they've lost some talent. We'll see what that emergence is, and Mike McDaniel's going to have to do a heck of a coaching job this year.
Yeah, and to follow up that, let's just say worst case scenario, as a Dolphin fan, this team underperforms again. Do you believe that, just your personal opinion, that Greer survives if Mike McDaniel doesn't, or do you think that they're a package deal?
It's interesting because I would have thought initially that maybe Brian Flores and Chris Greer were a package deal, and it wasn't. And so, I could say yes, it would make perfect sense for if one's out, both is out. But at the same time, Chris Greer has been in the organization since 2000. He has certainly made himself a valuable resource for Stephen Ross. And I'm at the stage now with Chris Greer that I'm going to believe it when I see it, that he is actually out of the building. I think that he's had incredible longevity, ability to stay steady. And I think a big part of the 2025 Dolphins will be, can you magnify what we have talent-wise with the coaching staff you have? And so I think that Chris Greer is relying upon Mike more than he ever has, whereas previous years, the talent may have been doing some of the job. You got a Tyreek, you got a Teron Armstead, you got a Jalen Ramsey. Those guys do it. Now it's about the coaching job. And so because of that, they feel more aligned than ever on success and whether or not they're both continuing on in Miami in 2026.
Yeah, another to be determined. All we can do is speculate at this point. So strictly on the field, another question about this season, not that we're trying to be negative, but if the season starts slowly, do you think the Dolphins would consider moving Tyreek Hill at the trade deadline? And if they did, do you think there would be a robust market with him, with everything he comes with all the headlines and all that stuff that comes off the field with the Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, I thought about this question because, let's say we're 3, the trade deadline is now week 10 or 11, but let's say they're 3-6, which again, no Dolphins fan wants to hear. If you're 3-6, somebody probably got hurt or things not going according to plan. They had a similar conversation with Calais Campbell last year and decided not to pull the trigger.
Right.
A lot of it's going to be based on the security, which we just talked about, that Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel feel. If they feel like we're going to be coaching in 2026, you make that trade, if you're 3-6, because Tyreek Hill, even with some of the off the field drama, is still one of the fastest dudes in the league. He is still a playmaker that puts fear in defenses. He's still a guy that even in the down years having 1,000 yards. That's who Tyreek Hill is on the field. And you add him to a contender, he probably can be a guy that puts you over the top. And so I think that would have value in the trade deadline, but it would also be a big white flag up to the rest of the roster that we're mailing it in. And that's just a tough thing to do as a coach with some pressure on you, a coach who some people think may be on the hot seat, same with the general manager. And so that's one of those deals where it may make more sense for the organization than it does for the people who are actually running the team if they're in that situation. And that point, you got to get ownership involved, and then Stephen Ross makes the call.
Yeah, I mean, and as we know, they restructured him last year as well and gave him more money. So it's one of those hard things going into this season as well, knowing that there were some of these things were done that I don't know were necessary, but they happened. So, all right. So you talk to people across the league.
Yeah.
I am just curious, what is the perception of the Dolphins right now from agents, execs, players, you name it? What's the perception they have of this team?
Not great, Marissa. I'm just gonna be real with you. I think there has long been a perception that this team was soft, that this was a video game offense, and that when times got rough, they wilted underneath the pressure. And now it seems like, hey, what is the state of leadership? What is the state of the locker room? What is the state of going forward? You see all these people leaving, your Jalen Ramseys, your Jonnu Smiths, your Torrin Armsteads, your Javon Hollands, your Calais Campbells. These are a lot of guys who were leaders, some of their best players, and you don't have those names that replace it. And so it's like, man, where are they? Are they in the soft reset is the word I've heard a little bit where, hey, which is why I answered the question you asked about the job security of those two guys. I don't know what they've been told behind closed doors with the ownership. If he said, hey, we need a year to clean up these books before we can go back after it. That's not something you tell your team. It's not something you tell the fan base, because fans don't come out for a soft reset year. And so I think they're in the midst of, we've got to be smarter with our money and the guys we bring in, but at the same time, we need to win. And so I think that there's certainly a perception that maybe the window the Dolphins had, they missed. And it's up to the Dolphins to prove that wrong.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it hurts to hear. The word soft, it hurts to hear. But, I mean, I want you to be honest with us. We didn't bring you on here to feed us sunshine and rainbows. So there you go. All right. I have one last question before we get you out of here. So heading into camp and into week 1, what's the storyline you're personally most interested in following when it comes to this team?
I think that twofold. One, I think I mentioned it earlier. I want to see how this secondary plays out. A lot of uncertainty and experience at corner. I actually did really like the fact they were able to get Minka back in the trade. He didn't play well in Pittsburgh last year, but I got a chance to learn a little bit about what was going on there and talk to Minka last year. And, they had him in positions where he wasn't using his skill set the way it needed to be used. And so I love the idea of Anthony Weaver with Minka Fitzpatrick. Maybe he gets placed in the Kyle Hamilton role where he can roam a little bit more on the field and use his playmaking ability. And I think that's going to help them in a group that is going to need a lot of help. So that's one side of the ball I'm eager to see. How does the experience of Minka work with the youth of the rest of the secondary? The other side, and I think this is really the Dolphins' path to having that year that Dolphins fans hope and wish for. What does the fully healthy, fruitful version of this speedy core look like again? Because you remember, this is the way this team is built. This is always going to be their strength, is the speed of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, now Devon Achane, and Jalen Wright. That 4 playmakers with Tua's quick passing ability. What does it look like in joint practices against Detroit and in Chicago? Can they get the flow and the chemistry that the way they were in 2023 before teams started to catch on to some of their motion and started to play that deep safety overlook where they couldn't get the plays down the field? Can they unlock some things that teams locked up for them in 2024? I think that's going to be a huge factor. Can they run the ball to where teams have to put that safety down in the box to be able to stop the run? Those are things that I think will determine whether we're talking about a 7-8 win team or this is a team that can get to 10-11 wins and threaten, for a playoff spot.
Yeah, you're bringing me right back to 2023. I mean, as a Dolphin fan 2 years ago, it was such a high to be a Dolphin fan. Every network you turned to, NFL Network, covering the Dolphins, greatest show on surf, everybody
Yeah.
talking about it. I mean, it was such a time. And then last year was just like, wah, wah, wah.
Right. Teams figure it out sometimes,
Yeah.
and I think this is such an interesting offseason for Mike McDaniel, not only as a leader and a coach, but as a schemer, because what are your answers? Teams are saying, hey, we're gonna bet that you get bored of throwing the check down every play. Can you really get the consistency of your receivers, your running game that you can 5-10 yarders down the field? And they were not able to do that consistently. They thrived off the big plays in 2023. Can they find that balance where the big plays come back? They can have success in the short game. They can get that yak. That's another thing. Can they get the yards after catch ability? And can they have enough in that run blocking to where teams feel like they're truly multidimensional? I think that's a huge question mark. And I think we'll learn pretty quickly what to expect about this team. Like I said, they go to Detroit. They go to Chicago for joint practices. Detroit in particular has a really, really good defense that loves to bring aggression. And I'm sure they're going to want to see how they handle it and there. And then they got Jacksonville, later on. So you got 3 teams you're going to spend some time joint practices with in preseason to see, are you ready to be closer to that 23 offense or the 24 offense?
Well, we are here for every bit of it. And I know you'll be boots on the ground with a lot of it too. So beyond them going to your Twitter, which you can follow Cameron Wolfe with NFL Network at Cameron Wolfe, when will folks be able to see you on the TV? Is it just going to be sporadically whenever there's time?
Yeah, great question. We do the Insiders, our show on NFL Network every night from 7 to 8 p.m. I'll actually be on that Thursday and Friday night of this week before training camp leaks up. And then next week, we'll start our training camp coverage. And so we'll start back together weekend that Saturday. I'll be in Miami. And so we'll have a live set. Me and Bucky Brooks will be out there on set and we'll be talking some Dolphins ball. So you'll be able to watch us on Inside Training Camp. Dolphins practice early. They have 9 a.m. practices. So we'll be up with them. And so our show, I think, will start at 9 or 10 a.m. and we'll be going doing a lot of reports through practice. We'll have some interviews of players that and maybe coach will come by as well and talk with them. And so a lot of great coverage on Saturday for you guys to watch on NFL Network. And then I start my camp travels along the way throughout. I'm going to Jacksonville. I think I got Atlanta and Carolina and Buffalo and Baltimore. And I know I got one more stop back in Miami, I think the 2nd of August. So we'll be back around there a couple times at camp and you'll see us on NFL Network talking about your team all leading up to preseason.
Well, we can't wait. I know you're sad about having to go down to South Florida and the beaches and having to be, I mean, it's a hard life. Someone has to.
Man, I hate it. Don't you hate when you have to
Don't
be
you hate
around the beach and the water and man, the sand? It's just it's so tough to deal with. And
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to you, Cam. It really does.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. We cannot wait for your coverage. We cannot wait for this season. Everybody, make sure you check out Cameron Wolfe. And Cam, thank you again so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And everyone out there on Dolphins Talk, we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube that you subscribe to the channel, you press like on the show. And I hope everyone has a great evening and fins up.
Hey everyone, Mike here from DolphinsTalk.com, and thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to take a second to smash the like button here on this video and also to ensure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We thank you so much for listening, and we know there are a lot of podcast options out there these days regarding the Miami Dolphins and with non-Miami Dolphins podcasts. So we do appreciate you giving us a few minutes each and every day to tune in and listen to all of our shows. Everyone here on staff, thanks you so much. And if you enjoy these shows, also please be sure to sign up for Dolphins Talk Extra, our Patreon service at patreon.com/Dolphins Talk, where we have bonus podcasts about the Dolphins and some shows not about the Miami Dolphins. We have a private message board. We also have a ton of contests where we give away really cool prizes, and it's all for the low cost of $3 a month. Again, that's patreon.com/Dolphins Dolphins Talk. And also, please be sure to follow the written content we have up on our website. So check out the website, DolphinsTalk.com, each and every day. Once again, thank you again for listening. Take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.